we are back. Oh, and where we left off, this thing's annoying the fuck out of me. Okay.
when we last left our heroes.
Yeah. Where we left off was, why were we talking about expelling a member when this guy wasn't even a member yet? So, we got this thing in, the LNC member leaked it to the public, whatever, the LNC wanted to send back the money. According to Nick, I can't verify this, but I trust Nick, there is a FEC law that says when you get in any kind of donation, the check has to be cashed within 10 days. An LNC ballot, at the time, we had already had it like 4 days or something, so a ballot wouldn't have finished in time, even if that was proper, to do a vote to send it back.
Email ballot takes how long again? 7
days.
Okay.
It used to be 10, but we brought it down to 7. I'd like it to be 3, but we should be able to do things quickly.
Yeah.
And the whole reason we have an executive committee is for when things can't be done quickly. Well, we wouldn't need an executive committee on the LNC if we can vote in 3 days.
Right.
There's no reason why someone can't check the email every frickin' 3 days. But anyway.
Some of us check the email every hour.
That's me.
Me
but
too.
Anyway, that's my gripe. So, because we had to cash the check within 10 days, even though LNC members were in the middle of trying to get a ballot sponsored in order to send it back. And for those of you who don't know, because I don't want to assume you know, on the LNC email list, in order to get an email ballot, you have to have 4 people co-sponsor it. Mm-hmm. So it's like a first in 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. And one person, I think it was Joshua Smith, but I'm not sure. It was either Joshua Smith or John Phillips, did a motion asking us to vote to send it back. Mm-hmm. That request for sponsors was up for 2 days, and no one co-sponsored it, or maybe one person did, but it did not get them out. But I don't think anyone did. That's important to mention, because so even though everyone was flapping their gums, no one or only one person co-sponsored it. He did not have the 4 co-sponsors that he needed. He needed himself plus 3 more people.
So the motion died.
Well, it could stay up forever. I mean, there's no time limit to get sponsors. Like, 2 months from now, someone could but theoretically, if you don't get sponsors within a week, it's pretty much dead. So, Nick, as he saw the time ticking, directed Dan to cash the check and enter this person into the membership rolls. And people thought Nick overstepped his boundaries there because he knew that the LNC, there was dissension. But the fact is we had to comply with the law. And John Phillips objected because he said, why didn't you let us know that was going to be your ruling so we could timely appeal and not have the clock run out? And he was really, really mad. And then I pointed out to him, I go, there was no ruling to make because there was no live motion. You can only make a ruling of the chair when there's a live motion.
Right.
Nick was just doing what he would normally have to do, make decisions.
An administrative function.
Right. There was no ruling to be made. No live motion, no ruling. And John Phillips is wonderful. He conceded. He's like, okay, I get it. Now I'm not as mad. I'm still mad, but I'm not as mad.
Yeah.
So then John started a motion to then revoke the membership, basically, to refund the money and revoke the membership. That immediately got co-sponsored because everyone was ticked about, not everyone, enough people were ticked about what Nick did, even though I think he was fully within his rights. And those of you who've been following the drama in the LNC, you know that I was one of the 8 people that signed a letter of complaint against Nick, basically. So I don't play cliques, and I don't play games. I don't say, oh, I'm against Nick, or oh, I'm for Nick. No, I judge each situation on its merits, and Nick is right now. It doesn't matter that I thought he was wrong on something else. He's right now. And some people don't know how to handle that. Oh, you're either pro-Nick or you're anti-Nick. No, I don't play that game.
I'm going to throw an interjection.
Sure. No, always jump in.
Yeah, I know. But, okay, according to the bylaws, Article 4, Section 1 says members of the party shall be those who have certified in writing that they oppose issues of force. You know, they send the pledge.
Right.
Okay. Sustaining members are the ones who pay the dues.
Right.
It sounds to me though like what could have happened was they could have simply have let the time frame on the check run out, which would have had this person be a member but not a sustaining
Right.
member.
You'd have been a free member.
Right. And that would have, I don't know if it would have diffused the situation or not, but it also would have put them in the situation where do you turn down the money?
Well, my understanding, and again, I might be speaking out my ass, is that you have to cash a donation. When it comes in, you either send it back or cash it.
You can't just let it expire.
You can't just let it expire. That's my. I could be wrong. That's the impression I got. Nick did not say that, so if I got the wrong impression, it's not his fault. But that's the distinct impression I got. So because there was no ruling from the LNC to send it back, and he didn't feel we had the authority to send it back under the bylaws, he directed the executive director to cash it.
That might be something to quietly ask the FEC about and say, hey, this is, you know, what's the right answer here? Without going into any details and saying, hey, if we don't cash it, we don't send it back, it expires within 10 days, what happens?
Right.
That's the question.
That'd be interesting to find out if there's anyone here who knows
It's covering all the bases.
Right. I'd be interested to know. I didn't know anything about this, and I'm trusting Nick's word on it.
Yeah.
But I have no reason
Any
not
case.
to trust his word on it, because even without that law, I think he would have done this.
Yeah.
Because it's the right thing. But whatever. So the guy is a member right now. As of right now, he's a member. So that's why we're talking about revoking a membership. So that's my little new dog upstairs, Skippy, the new dachshund we adopted. He's distracting the hell out of me now. Hold on, I'm gonna gather my choo-choo.
Talking about expelling member.
I think we probably got an Amazon delivery. That's probably. So, John Phillips then did a motion to revoke and send a refund. That immediately got co-sponsored. The minute it got co-sponsored, Nick ruled the motion out of order, because now there's a live motion. He ruled it out of order and said we're not allowed to do that pursuant to the bylaws.
Which makes perfect sense.
And then Mr. Phillips appealed the ruling of the chair. And Mr. Smith seconded it. And then there was a little dispute between myself and Mr. Smith, because I said, no, you need 4 people. And he's like, show me in Roberts where it says you need 4 people. I go, it's not in Roberts, because Roberts says no email ballots. It goes to our bylaws, which says you need 4 for an email ballot. Me personally, I don't believe our bylaws allow us to do appeals from rulings of the chair by email, because I don't consider it an email ballot. It's a special circumstance. And I think we'd have to call a meeting. And the reason why is because there are specific procedures for appeals of rulings of the chair.
Yes, there
The
are.
chair gets to speak first and last. You can't do that.
In an email
In an
ballot,
email ballot.
because of the nature of the free flow
Right.
of an email.
But Nick ruled that we can do it. If you remember, when I was platform committee chair, I ruled as chair that we could not do it. And
Right.
I immediately called a meeting. If Nick was going to say we couldn't do it, he would have to call a meeting. Otherwise, that would be then abuse to say you got to get 6 people to do. He would have to, as chair, call a meeting, which is what I did as platform committee chair.
Yeah, here's Article 13 about electronic mail ballots. The boards or committees may transact business by electronic mail. The chair or secretary shall send out electronic mail ballots on any questions submitted by the chair or co-sponsored by at least 1/5 of the members
Which is
of
4.
the board, which is your 4. 7 days open for voting, and so on and so on. It doesn't specifically say here in the article that it has to apply only to main motions. It doesn't exclude appealing rulings of the chair or any type of specific motion.
I think where it says business, appeals are not business. Business is, are we going to expend money? Are we going to pass a resolution? Appeals are not business. But it doesn't matter. Nick disagrees.
Goes back to
Any
how you
committee
define
I'm on,
business.
I will rule as...
Yeah, that's how you define business.
Right.
But however, the idea that for an appeal of the chair that they have the right to speak first and last, You can't do that in an electronic forum.
Right.
So,
And that's a prerogative of the chair. So Nick basically waived that, and that's his right.
yeah.
Any committee I'm on, I will rule. And it's funny because somebody asked him about some other ruling, and he said, look, do you really want me to make multiple rulings where you're going to appeal the ruling from the chair and then appeal from, he goes, pretty soon it gets ridiculous, you guys. And it's right. So right now we're just on one level of appeal, and Nick said we could do it by email ballot. I don't agree, but that's why he gets paid the big bucks, which none of us get paid anything. That's a joke. So that's why we're talking about him being a member. And what's interesting, though, for appeals from the ruling of the chair, the votes flip. Normally you need more ayes than noes to have an affirmative result. In order to appeal, to successfully overturn, you need more noes than yeses for appeals from the ruling of the chair. Because a yes sustains
Right,
the
because
ruling.
the motion for an appealing of the ruling of the chair, the motion is to sustain the ruling of the chair, not to overturn the ruling of the chair.
Right. So if there's a
It's one of those
tie,
little oddball subtleties of Roberts that gets that is
it confuses people.
It does, because it's exactly the opposite of what everything else is.
So I was sure to say that in the email ballot. So
And people have yelled at Balch and Company to fix that for years, and they still refuse to do it.
And it comes important when there's a tie, because normally when there's a tie, it defaults to no.
Right.
But when there's a tie on this one, it's sustained because the no's didn't get a majority.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
But
if they fix the if the folks over at Roberts, I call them the super dorks, turns around and fixes that so that the motion is to sustain the ruling of the chair, not or the motion to overturn it, then a yay to overturn, and a no to sustain it, makes a hell of a lot more sense than everything else. But that's not the way they're going to do it.
right. And so what people
Welcome to the chaos of Robert's rules.
So when I vote on it, and I encourage everyone to do this, I don't just say yes or no. I say yes, I want to uphold the ruling of the chair, so that no one gets confused.
So it's crystal clear.
Yeah. So anyway, we're now in voting, and it's in the 7-day ballot. I think right now it's tied
It's pretty close to that.
because I voted to uphold. Richard voted to uphold. Dr. Olson voted to uphold.
He's an alternate, right?
But his primary hasn't voted yet, so it counts right now. Mr. Smith has voted to overturn. Mr. Phillips has voted to overturn, and Miss Adams has voted to overturn. She's an alternate, but her primary hasn't voted. So it's tied 3-3, which means so far it's sustained. That's why it's important. And I don't really know how the rest of the LNC goes. And I would hope that Mr. Phillips or Mr. Smith did a nose count before bringing the motion. But maybe when I make motions, I don't care if I win if it's the principle of the thing, so maybe they just think it's the principle of the thing. I'm not sure how this is going to go.
Well, logically speaking, if the ruling of the chair is sustained, the motion's dead.
It's dead.
And then we're at the LNC's at a position of they could return the money but keep the membership.
No, they'd have to be a different motion.
Right. Well, the different motion, yes.
So, or a member of the LNC can appeal it to the Judicial Committee.
Which is a whole different ball of wax because of the way the Judicial Committee wasn't properly constituted back in New Orleans.
But the LNC has voluntarily bound itself to the decisions of the Judicial Committee as if they were duly elected. That's a resolution I got through because I knew we were going to need it. So while the Judicial Committee can't bind you as a member, we have voluntarily agreed as the LNC to be bound. Okay. So we do have a Judicial Committee for that purpose. They're an acting Judicial Committee.
But on the other hand, if the ruling of the chair is overturned, the motion becomes active.
And then we vote on that.
And then we're in totally uncharted waters.
Right. Because Nick then argued, I have to look at the original motion because I think the motion just said return the money, and I think maybe he assumed the membership would be revoked. But as you said, if he signed the pledge, he's still a free member.
Right.
And Nick's argument was he's still a sustaining member because he paid the $25. the fact that we sent it back is irrelevant.
And there's actually a point to that.
I think he's right.
Yeah, because the sustaining member is someone who is paid within the prior 12
Yeah,
months.
it doesn't say paid and the LNC doesn't give it back.
Right. So at the end of the 12 months, he may no longer be a sustaining member. But
Right.
up until that point, he's good to go.
Right.
So,
Now, for appearance...
which makes returning the money basically a moot point.
Well, but you could then have the out if somebody causes a scandal to say, well, we returned the money. That's all we could do. Because I think it was, there's been candidates who've gotten money from like the KKK or whatever and returned it,
Yeah.
you know. So,
But the counter argument to that at the same time is if they keep it, $25? Pfft, big deal.
to some people it is though.
Yeah.
So, when I'm out of a job, it'll be a big deal to me.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where we're at now.
But $25 in a political party is tip the bellhop on the way out the door. So,
What I want to deal with now is some, well, you know, I'm going to paraphrase. I'll try to do the best I can. I never intentionally misrepresent someone. I will go read it maybe when you're talking at some point. But some arguments of the LNC besides it defaults to Roberts. The bylaws are silent, blah, blah, blah.
and Roberts isn't the best authority on the situation.
Right. Because it doesn't, he wasn't a member when he did this. And if you're going to say things done prior to a member, we're all in danger.
Now, just for the purposes of completeness, is there anything in special rules of order or the policy manual
No.
addressing this? Okay.
No, nothing in the policy manual addressing it.
Fair enough.
So, no, not at all. I was just going through my mind a little bit, and no. And the only reason I just did a whole style review of it, so I'm pretty confident I'm right on that.
That's cool. This is covering all bases.
Yeah. And we don't have, all we have, well, the policy manual is our special rules of order. It's our special rules and standing rules are
Got it.
combined into the policy manual.
There we go.
So, besides those arguments, somebody I deeply respect on the LNC, who is Stephen Nicala, who is the state chair of Florida and the regional representative for there, said something, though, that I think it alarms me. And again, I deeply respect Mr. Nicala. We probably vote the same on nearly everything. And I'm paraphrasing, I will probably get the exact quote because this is alarming. Maybe you let me know. You haven't heard this yet. You know what? I've got to get the exact quote because I want you to hear it and I want your first reaction because I know you will not hesitate to disagree with me.
If we unplug the microphone and then reroute the wire over here, will that get us to...
It will stop this. And
Okay, then never mind.
I don't want to.
Okay.
You can keep going or I can cut this out.
Technical issues, folks. The way things are wired in here, the wire for the microphone doesn't quite reach where she wants to get to, so we're leaving it as is. So while she's looking that up, it seems to me, just from the outsider looking in here, that this gentleman has paid his dues. He signed a pledge, that makes him a member. They have cashed a check, which they're required to do. And if they return the money, he's still a sustaining member. And even if they decide that, even the LNC decides that he's not a sustaining member, he's still a free member.
He's still a basic member.
Which makes the whole question mark of what the hell's the point besides public perception of, oh, we have a convict in our ranks. Well, here's the question. How many convicts do we have in our ranks?
We have a lot.
We have a lot. The other parties have a lot too. And what's considered a convict varies from state to state and person to person. You know, we believe in the premise of you have to have harm to an individual, aggressive harm, or damage to their property.
Well, I'm going to bring up something about his trial because it's relevant here.
Okay.
We believe that the federal government, there shouldn't be federal laws. It's the states. Crimes are, unless you're talking about treason or things like that, there's nowhere in the Constitution that gives the federal government authority to say, like, make heroin illegal.
Right.
So this guy was in New York, and New York couldn't convict him because he didn't do anything illegal under New York law. So they called the feds in to convict him. We don't believe the feds have that jurisdiction.
Right, because they shouldn't, because nothing happened across state lines.
Right, so, even if, okay, they believe they have the jurisdiction because of that whole thing.
Right.
But I don't believe that argument, and most libertarians don't believe that the, what is it, the full, what,
Necessary and
that-
proper is the clause.
well, what's the one that they keep, they invoke for everything? Yeah, it's the Interstate Commerce Clause, right?
Interstate Commerce, yeah.
But that was for disputes between the two states.
Correct.
Not for just people doing business in two states.
Yes, it's been convoluted over years,
Right.
starting back with the Roosevelt administration,
Right.
among others.
So, even if he was guilty, which I'm going to assume he is, guilty, well, I don't want to say the word guilty. Even if he did do whatever it was they said he did, guilty's a legal thing, he didn't break the laws in New York. They couldn't convict him. Do we agree with setting the feds in on people? Or we only agree with it when it's a crime that we don't care for? Rights are there for the repugnant. But anyway, I want to find Mr.
Yeah.
Nikiela's post. But I forgot about that point. And that weighs heavy, I think.
Yeah, and that goes back to how we view our principles. You know, should the federal government have a whole set of laws beyond the few of treason and such that are explicitly defined in the Constitution, and should they have those laws in conjunction of the parallel jurisdiction of the states? And the answer is, for the most part, we believe no. For the simple argument that there's no reason for them. Interstate commerce has been used to justify so many abuses of the law.
Right.
Wickard v. Filburn, if you go look it up, it's one hell of a ruling. That's one of the cases in play, which has allowed the federal government to trample all over the rights of individuals and the rights and the reserved powers of states throughout the country in how they deal with these things. In reality, there should not be federal regulation of commerce within a state. There should not be federal regulation of individual actions within a state, except in the cases of treason and bribery, which are specifically described in the Constitution. The rest of it is meant and always has meant to be a state issue.
Yeah, so I found on Mr. Nikiela's post, and again, I want to say again, this isn't anything personal against Mr. Nikiela.
You're citing the facts.
I'm citing the facts, and I just want to make that clear because I'm not trying to attack any other LNC member. I believe everyone is acting in good faith. So let me move my mic here. I'm going to read his post, and this is public. Dear all, between preparations for the holidays and Hell Week coming up in the Florida Keys, it's already been a busy week, and with the latest controversy, a troubling past few days. I've been giving this issue a lot of thought and it has weighed on me. As the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Florida, the last thing I want to do is promote an internet lynch mob and attack an individual of which I am not his judge or jury. I want to start off by expressing my sheer disappointment at the individual's name becoming public. Here is a man, through whatever cascading torrent events in his life, felt the need to dispatch a signed nap and $25 check to the Libertarian Party in the hopes that we would fight for him in some way or serve as part of a greater political purpose in his life. So far, it sounds really good, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Or perhaps he's mad at the world and thinks we could make it worse. I don't know. Nor do I know the circumstances of his case. The only thing I know is the conviction by the state. Sex trafficking minors or pimping 16-year-old girls on back pages. That was his crime, and now he is currently incarcerated. His name is being spread around on social media by an organization he applied for, an organization which could have simply turned him down or blindly accepted his money. I disagree there, but anyway. It was not the right decision to make this case public. Transparency is not always our best option, and not every member needs a say in every decision the LNC makes. That sounds bad, but I agree when it deals with privacy and discipline.
Yeah, that's why they have executive sessions.
Right. Furthermore, does joining the Libertarian Party now constitute the fact that your past may be publicly scrutinized and remain on an online list forever with strangers who get to debate about your character? I'm assuming our executive director may be more cautious in the future as to bring certain issues to the board or simply confide in the chair or a select few members on advice before taking action. The executive director brought this up confidentially. I do not agree with him chastising the executive director. Is that the culture we want to set for the board, where all controversial issues become public and a point of contention among us and our members? I would think not. Someday there will be a point where we cannot afford to vet every single individual who joins our organization. That point may have already passed. It has. However, there does come times, and here's where I start to disagree. There does come times when we receive a choice, and that choice should be given the full weight of repercussions and must not be taken lightly when it comes. The non-aggression pledge was designed to distance ourselves from people who do terrible things in our name, if and when it does happen. But what if they've already done something? Now, do we allow this individual, whom we have made the center of an avoidable feeding frenzy, to join our organization, or do we reject his membership and/or donation? After much thought into this issue, I must consider who I owe my allegiance to, which is the membership. The membership will not benefit from one convicted and currently incarcerated man from becoming a member at the expense of the organization's reputation, which directly affects the standing of our members. Our reputation is everything and must be protected with care and molded like a great artist. We cannot leave our reputation to chance or gossip. We must not allow the party to look weak or allow our membership to suffer because of the consequences of the LNC making this public, regardless of what our decision would have been. Many members in Florida believe this is a waste of time, and I agree. However, to many members, child abuse, despite whatever arguments may be made that the acts could have been consensual or that they could have been underprivileged, are just excuses to those who hear child abuse. Thus, I've made my decision to co-sponsor to appeal the ruling of the chair. Now, your thoughts on that part where I said, now here's where I start to disagree, before I tell you mine, because something really bugged me about that, but it might not bug you. I might be unreasonable here.
Read that part back again for me.
Okay, just that. Just what I think is the objectionable part. Okay.
Yeah.
I must consider who I owe my allegiance to, which is the membership. The membership will not benefit from one convicted and currently incarcerated man from becoming a member at the expense of the organization's reputation, which directly affects the standing of our members.
Okay.
And then he goes on about how important reputation is.
Okay. Let's look at that from a rank and file perspective here. Okay. First of all, there is a whole question about what exactly is the party's reputation, and at least among the comment boards of the political universe, the LP does not have a good reputation. And that is because there are still people who consider, wrapped up in their own status and whatever, that we're considered something of a joke, ineffectual, take your pick of criticism.
Or there's Star Child, or there's the pink-haired secretary.
Yeah. Or take your pick of reasons.
Or the guy who wears tie-dye.
Yeah. People will find a reason to criticize the party no matter what in the hell we do. We could have every member of the party be all the cherubim and seraphim in heaven and Mother Teresa to boot.
Oh, a lot of people have a problem with Mother Teresa, so there you go.
And they will still have criticism over it for whatever reason. You know, you're not going to please everybody all the time. Is one person who happens to be a convict going to impact the reputation of the party? The answer is really no. And the reason for that is that if a single person who is a convict, or even a person who has been indicted and not convicted, or charged and not brought to trial, charges dropped, take your pick about what type of criminal issue you're describing, everything from a victimless crime to mass murder, what you're winding up with is everybody could be damaging to a party's reputation who has been in that boat. And believe me, there's a hell of a lot more of them in the major parties than there are in ours as a minor party. So the bottom line of it is, it's not really a factor.
So you didn't, I might be being unreasonable. Let me let you know what, because I went into orbit when I read that. Mm-hmm. What I heard was, I'm here for the good of the collective and not the individual.
That's a fair point.
And I said, if that's true, libertarianism is a fraud.
One of the great contradictions of the party, and this has been this way from day one, is that they are a collectivist organization trying to achieve individual freedom,
but
which is a challenge.
Well, but we're a collective fighting for the rights of the individual.
Correct.
And I don't think we can do that by saying, who's my duty to? Mm-hmm. To the collective? What's the membership? there's no membership, just like there's no government and there's no society. There are only individuals. Am I part of the membership? I don't want you to throw them out. Are you representing me?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And I hope Mr. Nikela reconsiders his words there, because it really, really disturbed me, because that's what I heard. Now, maybe I am being unreasonable.
Well, no, there's a point to it. There's a point, because when you're dealing with any type of a group whose quantity of members is more than one, more than just an individual, you are dealing with a collective by definition. Whether it's you and I sitting here as a collective talking about this stuff, or whether it's a family unit even can be considered a collective in its own way. A political party has its own forms of that.
But, okay, let's say we're going to do the weird hypotheticals that libertarians love to do. If we're talking about collectives.
Everybody break out your pins. We're starting to dance on the heads of them.
We have 1 million people who are going to die of some virus. You happen to have antibodies in your blood that could cure everybody, but it would kill you to take it. How easily could we say, my duty's to all these people? What's this one guy? But we know, in that example, we know that's wrong.
Right.
Now, of course, life and death is different.
That's a classic greater good argument, too, though.
But do you trash the reputation of a person for the betterment? I just don't think you could ever, as a libertarian, say, it's either right or wrong, not right because it benefits more people. So I really...
You can't apply a quantitative analysis to what the right answer is.
And because the same thing comes with the border things, where people go, well, I don't want immigrants here. I go, but I do. Who wins? Okay, so that was one argument made. Another argument made, and this one will piss you off. I don't know if this was by LNC members necessarily. Well, it was, though the more egregious ones of it haven't been by LNC members. But they basically said, we cannot let our rules get in the way of us doing what's right.
If the rules are crafted properly, then you will be able to do what's right under them. That's the whole flippin' point of why we continually have our rules, our bylaws, our policies and the policy manual, all of those pieces under perpetual review and adjustment.
I would say in an artificially created creature, which we are, what's right is what our rules are, because that's what the members agreed upon. It's immoral to go against our rules.
But then you go back to the argument of who's setting those rules, the majority and the minority is ignored, and how do you deal with the individual?
But the minority in joining the group under Roberts agreed to that.
Yeah, because we're getting back to the philosophical base of obviously.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, in a voluntary organization, we all agreed to be bound by these rules.
Right, because we choose that as we come in. But at the same time, that also means that we have an obligation as we go, that if we find a problem with the rules for whatever reason, we fix it.
You fix it. You don't just disobey the rules.
Right. You don't just ignore them. This is the problem we're having in Colorado right now. People are trying to ignore the damn rules instead of following them properly.
Because and they say the same thing. We can't let procedure get in the way.
Well, good process produces good results.
Right. And they make all the jokes about the bylaw. Okay. Now, so that's the tamer version of the article that board members have been making, but regular members who agree with that side have been making things like, you and your precious bylaws. Those protect your rights.
I don't think they understand that, to be fair.
Well, Colorado don't.
Well, yeah. No, I say that because, and I know you're big on protecting the rights of the members, and to your credit, that's great. But I don't think that a lot of people understand entirely what that means. It sounds, on the initial statement, very abstract.
But it isn't if you view it as a contract.
People don't view it as a contract,
but it is.
though. I agree it is, but they don't view it that way.
If they view it like our Constitution, then we get it.
Yeah, I mean the whole reason we have a severability clause in our state parties documents is because it's being treated like a contract.
Yeah, it is. This is the contract that we are agreed to be bound amongst each other.
Yeah.
And our contract says if you pay $25 and sign the pledge, you're a member.
Right.
And I'm protecting that right.
Mm-hmm. And
they go, well, you're protecting it for a bad person. That may be true, but that's really when rubber meets the road, isn't it? When it comes to it's not hard to protect a good person. It's like freedom of speech. It's not for beautiful speech. It's for ugly speech.
Mortgage contracts protect predatory lenders as well as reasonable ones. So.
And the fact is, this isn't a life or death situation like an adhesion contract. You know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to pretty much. Well, you know what I mean. It's one that you're forced into. Your consent really isn't consent
Right.
in an adhesion contract. This isn't. You don't have to be a member of this party.
Yeah. We have a word for adhesion contracts: statism.
Yeah. So, a lot of people argue like insurance contracts, Archie, because you can't bargain with your insurance company. This is your policy.
Yeah. You use your agreements for software. Great example.
So what
The
happens?
social contract that we have with each other.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to see what that social contract says in words. I've never seen it.
And no one agrees on what it is, but
Yeah.
So this is we can't violate the contract, and yeah, libertarians honor contracts.
Yeah.
So to me, that's where I'm coming from. I do view it in black and white, and I do view it as a matter of principle. So that's some arguments made. Now, some other people are arguing, they're doing the whataboutisms. What about the fact that there are babies that are signed up to be members? They didn't sign the pledge. And that's true, you can sign up your children.
Yes.
But you can do a lot of things for your children right now. And why can you do that? It's because you are the legal, you're a parent, you're the legal guardian of their rights,
Right.
which means you can sign on their behalf until they are of an age that they can do so.
Right.
So the pledge has been signed by their guardian. The minute the minor becomes of an age, they are going to have to sign it for themselves or repudiate it.
But okay, let me throw this out though. Is there any age requirement within the party to sign the pledge?
Well, no, there's not. But this is, I believe, the way the party views it, and this is the way I would view
And I
it.
asked that question because last year my 16-year-old son signed the pledge on his own.
Well, they would leave it up to the parents as to whether they believe the child could sign it on their own.
Well, concerning both of his parents are also party members, I think they said
Yeah.
okay.
We don't examine that.
Yeah.
If parents think a 4-year-old can sign it, we're not going to ask whether it was the parent or not.
So that kind of shoots that one aboutism down the drain.
Right. But I think a better question was it raised that I thought you were raising, but you didn't, is a parent signs it on the baby. When do we require the child to sign it on their own? And we don't. But the way we take it is it's signed if the child is, as an adult, is aware of it and doesn't repudiate it, then they've affirmed it. That's kind of even the way contracts with minors work.
That the silence is consent?
Well, it's not, because somebody consented for them legally,
Yeah.
and they're bound already. So it's not silent. So if they want to get out of it now that they have additional abilities, there is an affirmative obligation to repudiate it.
Would somebody please tell that to the Social Security Administration?
I mean, I can see how that can be repugnant in some way.
Yeah.
But we really are getting into the weeds here.
Right.
I don't think in the time, well, the party's 50, so maybe there have been some babies that have grown up or whatever.
There has been some people on the 18-year plan. I know some.
Okay. So that, granted, okay, that's a weird situation.
And just for you folks know, the 18-year plan means we have kids and we raise them libertarian and they become party members when they become adults.
Well, Nick Sarwark was on the 18-year-old plan.
He still is on the 18 plan.
Yeah, well, but I mean, it's funny, a lot of people don't know this about Nick when they like to rag on him. And listen, I criticize Nick a lot, but he's a second-generation libertarian. He's never been anything else. He's probably one of the few people who could maybe even say, no, I haven't really violated the, because he's been raised that way. Another second-generation libertarian is Alvin O'Brien, which I think is pretty cool. We don't have very many of them.
Don't have enough of them.
Well, I was going to make a libertarian joke. It's never mind that libertarians don't reproduce because no one wants to have sex with them. Listen, I can say that. I'm a libertarian. Remember I posted that meme?
I can laugh at that because I'm married to one and we have kids.
Remember that meme I posted where it had condom 80% effectiveness, pill 99% effectiveness, and then had the Libertarian Party logo 100% effectiveness for birth control. But anyway, joke, we can joke, right?
Yes, we can.
It's like me, listen, because I have autism, I can joke about autism. I could say autistic screeching. I can get away with it. Sorry, I've got my Aspie privilege. And now I'm totally, so the whole child thing.
What about, yeah. What about
So, Ms. Adams had said, but we've rejected a membership. Somebody did a gift membership to Trump, and we rejected it. Because Trump didn't sign the pledge, and he's not a baby. Well, whether or not he's a baby is, I guess, up for grabs, but he's competent to sign contracts.
Not if you're the Democrats talking about it.
Well, so that's why it was rejected. If Donald Trump sends in $25 and signs the pledge, he's a member. Listen, gun-grabbing Weld is a member.
Uh-huh.
I'm much more offended by that, and I don't mind saying it. That guy advocated for the initiation of force after he signed the pledge. Mm-hmm. If we're going to throw this guy out, I want to know when we're throwing Weld out. Mm-hmm. But he's a life member, and it says all life memberships must be honored. So there you go. If all life memberships must... We just raised another point. Uh-huh. If all life memberships must be honored, that proves that the pledge is not a litmus test. Mm-hmm. Because we must honor it. Mm-hmm. Unless the person themselves affirmatively says, I don't want it. Because you can repudiate your membership.
Yes.
Thomas Knapp got mad and did that once. Mm-hmm. And then when he came back, he was like, damn it, I can't serve on the Judicial Committee because you have to be 5 consecutive years. Mm-hmm.
That was right. About the time you started up the Boston Tea Party.
Right. So
which has
if
a
you're
whole
ever
other set of stories to it, folks, but we'll just leave it there.
Yeah. If you're ever mad at the party, don't repudiate your membership. Like, keep your free membership. You don't need to pay because you might regret it later on and whatever.
Exactly.
Because Tom Knapp did. But I understand the impulse because I'm very impulsive like that too.
Well, I was a free member for several years also.
I think I convinced you.
To
Recently.
Resustain, yeah. But I was a sustaining member initially, and then it lapsed for a while when they abolished the dues and.
Well, that was crazy.
Yeah. And I didn't bother re-upping sustaining for the longest time until a few years ago. So, but you know,
I'm taking credit for that. Sorry, whether you're going to give me credit or not.
I'm taking credit for it.
I'm taking credit for it. Yeah, so that's interesting. That just raised another point. So I'm trying to think of any of other arguments that were made because I think those arguments I can't strongman because they're just bad. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there really were anymore except for emotional things like, are we going to be a haven for child molesters? We're not talking about a child molester.
Yeah. He
didn't, as far as I know, have sex with these girls, and they're not children in the way we think of children. They're minors.
Yeah. They're teenagers.
Okay. Go to any 16-year-old and call them a child and see how they react.
They'll have a fit. They'll have a fit like a child.
They're
really?
A minor.
They're
a minor, even or juvenile. They're not a child. I'm sorry. We need to start being.
They're a teenager.
Right. We shouldn't use terms just for their emotional effect.
Right.
That's manipulative, and we shouldn't do that.
That's the stuff that the main parties use, and that's what people use to appeal to emotion instead of rationality.
Right. And so the people going on about not a child, not a molester. Mm-hmm. Trafficker of minors. That would be potentially fair. And I don't know if there's any other arguments. Can you think of any that you may have seen? Because you've been out and about.
What about the pedophile one?
Go ahead.
Well, we were talking earlier about this, and the idea of this person being accused of being a pedophile because of these.
Well, yeah, definitely. He's not a pedophile.
No, he's not. Even
if he had sex with those girls, he's not a pedophile because pedophile means attracted to prepubescent. Mm-hmm. That's being attracted to minors that are past puberty is some other word. Ebophilia.
I'm not sure.
There's a word for it. Or, as somebody said, or as we say in the South, a dirty old man.
Or as they say in some places, looking for jailbait.
Yeah, or about to get shot by the father.
Right.
So, there was another issue to bring up, though. So, what can we do? The LNC can do nothing. But what can we, as members or delegates, do? We could change the bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to?
That's the ultimate debate right there.
What
'Cause
would
on
it
one-
say?
Well, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I'll tell you right now, I don't think we should change this. There's several ways to approach it. The first one is that you could require all membership applications to be reviewed and approved by somebody, whether it's the executive committee, the LNC, a review by delegates at convention, which would be absurd because it's every 2 years, by somebody, whoever that may be.
Memberships are every year, and we got
Yeah.
thousands of them.
Exactly. That is just simply not feasible from a practical application perspective. Not to mention from the principal perspective, it's like, well, okay, to quote Groucho Marx, why would I join a club that would have me as a member? You could add language into the bylaws to say that you could throw somebody out as a member because a membership is not based on voter registration within a state. It is based upon whether you signed a pledge and you pay the dues, and you don't even need to pay the dues to be a member. Just sign the pledge.
Right.
Okay. And technically, the way that the membership bylaw is worded, someone could actually do a life membership without having to sign the pledge because they're not.
I think you have to sign the pledge.
Maybe, well, it says may offer life memberships, but if
You
accept
have
it-
to sign the pledge, I believe.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. Then I may not be correct then, but in any case, you're back at the situation. You're like, okay, if you sign a pledge or you pay the dues, okay, yeah, you can let your membership lapse at the end of the year. That's happened. We've had cases involving that with.
Yeah, but then they're just not
members in the
sustaining.
past.
They're still a
Right.
member.
They're not sustaining. They're still members, and some other issues attached to all that. But at the same time, if you want to add provisions to throw members out of the party at the national level, you have to define exactly what would be the grounds to do that and the due process
Right.
to make it happen. Now, some states already do this at the state level, and that's fine for them. But for a national level to do this, to be honest, I don't think such a thing would ever pass at a convention.
Yeah, well, what's the appeal? Is it going to be the Judicial Committee? Is that all they're going to be doing?
Yeah. Okay, in one state, California has it in their bylaws that if the Judicial Committee ruling is not accepted by the membership, they can override it at a convention by a 2/3 vote of the convention. We've had that happen out there when I was vice chair. The result of it was that we had the whole convention go into an executive session to discuss the issue, which I'll come back to that in a minute for the LNC. But the point of it is that you're going to do this, you'd have to come up with this proposal to handle all this in a way that...
And according to Roberts, you have to have a trial.
Yes, and you have to have the trial, okay, unless you specifically in the bylaws say don't do a trial, you have a specific process.
But would we as
handle it.
libertarians want to do away with due process?
Oh, some would. But the point of it is that if you're going to do all that, you've got to concoct this proposal. You've got to make it as neutral to each individual as possible so that it's not geared as an ex post facto or an attainder thing against a specific type of person. And then you got to convince the delegates at the convention to pass the darn thing, if it even ever gets out of the bylaws committee. You've got a whole ton of uphill hurdles to travel
And then
to get there.
who makes are we talking about LNC making decisions? Let me tell you
Yeah.
something. I'm on the LNC, as you know.
Right.
I wouldn't trust the LNC to make decisions, and I'm one of them.
Right. I mean,
Because there's always an ideological agenda on every
Right.
LNC.
yeah.
This one, this LNC, I think is it's not very, but over the past, there's been some both ways.
Yeah.
When Rothbard was on it was a very radical LNC. During the time of the Barr campaign, it was a very moderate LNC. Do you want to leave your fate up to that? I think not.
Another example, look what's going on in California right now with the backlash against their judicial committee over their platform. There was a proposal for California right now to abolish their judicial committee, and then if there's issues that would require a judicial committee to do something, they'd be an ad hoc committee appointed by the chair.
Which
Well-
is the fox guarding the hen house.
Well, yeah, because of what if the judicial committee appeal it has to do with the ruling of the chair in the first place.
Right.
But at the same time, okay, you could do an ad hoc committee appointed by, say, the LNC or the executive committee to handle these cases. But then you're going back into the same problem of, okay, who's going to be on these committees? What's their tie into the situation? Are they cronies with people on the LNC and the XCOM? You have all of that ball.
Are
can
you
of
going
worms to deal
to
with.
get a errors and omissions policy to cover them if this person comes back and sues them for slander?
Right. To do something like this creates a whole hornet's nest of stuff.
Right, unintended consequences.
It's that you got to think out and work through in order to come up with a good answer. And I don't think that, to be fair, that people have thought that far out. I mean, we're just talking off the top of our
Right,
heads here.
and we're still coming up with problems.
Right, exactly. And we've been doing bylaws forever.
And well, let's say though it was possible to craft something. I'd say that LNC is the last place where you want to put that power. And if you were going to have that power, what I think would be the best way, so we're just pretending like some of those other problems don't exist,
Right.
is using the same process that we use to appeal a decision of the LNC. You get 10% of the last delegates from the last convention to sign off and
Which you
do
can
a
do.
petition.
Yeah.
That may be something that would be a bit more, because it's in the hands of the delegates. You need
But
to get
it's-
away from the LNC.
But at the same time, having been through one of those, it is extremely difficult to even meet that threshold.
You want it to be difficult.
Yeah. So you're faced with the question of who do you want to have this power?
Well, I know
And
you
could do, like you said, the 10% of the delegates. You could do a convocation of the state chairs, even the state chairs within a region of the affected person. There's lots of ways to work it.
well, the last
And there's
choice you
no-
want is the LNC. That's as
but
far
there's no perfect way to handle
No.
it.
But I would say if the choice is always between the LNC and the delegates, it always should be the delegates.
No, I agree with that. Now, I mentioned something earlier I want to get back to
Sure.
about the question of executive session. Okay. Why has this not gone into executive session discussion with the LNC in the first place?
Because
Because we're talking about issues of membership.
it was in a confidential email that wasn't an officially called, it was confidential though.
Right.
So for practical purposes, it was an executive session, and an LNC member decided to make it public. And we've had, and I'm not going to say which member did it because I'm not here out to crucify LNC members. The person knows who it is, and I don't know if they apologized or not. I don't think they have, but that's neither here nor there. We have had members write, at least one, maybe two, write the LNC and say that LNC member needs to be censored. And I don't like pointing fingers because I fuck up all the time, so I like to show grace. But it wouldn't be unreasonable. I don't know if I'd vote for it. If the person said I screwed up, I wouldn't vote for it because people screw up.
Right.
I do not believe it was ever done maliciously. And I don't think censorship is appropriate for mistakes.
Well, as one of the co-founders of the Transparency Caucus years ago, I can understand that. But at the same time, while technically executive session has to do with personnel issues and legal issues, with a
Or
membership
discipline.
or discipline,
This is discipline.
right? That's why I think this whole thing should be thrown out the window in the public view of it and thrown into executive session where it can be hammered out in a much more constrained manner, and then respond accordingly.
That's interesting. So if that motion becomes live again,
Yeah.
there can a member, let's say an LNC member such as myself, can raise an objection that requires a ruling from the chair that this needs to be an executive session.
Yes.
Consider it done.
And the beauty of that is because then that removes it from the public purview, which, okay, it doesn't put the fire out per se.
No,
but it
because
certainly
the horse is out of this barn.
right, but it certainly establishes a precedent for the next time, and there will be a next time, as well as saying, okay, slow down a minute, folks. This is something we have to be very deliberative about because of these specific issues.
Well, and a problem I have is that after this one LNC member leaked it, the name, not the situation, the name.
Right.
Other LNC members then felt free to throw the name around, saying, well, it was already out. But our policy manual deals with this in principle, which talks about confidential issues, that you're not allowed to reveal them, and the fact that you can reveal them if they're already commonly known, but not if the reason they're commonly known is because someone else violated confidentiality, which is what happened. So the people now who keep pointing their finger at this other go, well, I didn't say it first, that person did. No, you're just as... There's more than one LNC. If there's ever a censor motion, there's more than one LNC member. So everyone should think twice before they cast this one person under the bus.
And I guess my point about it is that because we're dealing with a disciplinary issue, effectively, then the question becomes, why isn't this an executive session? And you guys are going to be thinking about these things because of the consequences and ramifications of this situation. You know, if it had been kept confidential and had never been leaked out, and to be fair, the first I heard about it was talking to you about it, okay, then...
But I never told you the name.
No, you haven't.
I've never mentioned the name.
And I don't know who it is, and frankly, it doesn't matter to me, but the simple fact of the matter is, the case in general, the fact, by leaking the information out when it shouldn't have been, that's what opened the can of worms in the first place. If they'd have said, oh, we need to probably discuss this in executive session and then determine if it needs to go in there or not, that's a whole different argument of process which protects the rights of the member or potential member, as this case may be.
And then coming out of executive session, no, the circumstances but not the name would be public. So the transparency would have been fulfilled. It would have been said there was a certain membership application with XXX fact pattern.
Right.
And we did whatever.
Right. And that would be perfectly legit and proper way to deal with it.
But no, I've never publicly mentioned the name. There's one person I mentioned the name to, and I didn't mention it. This person already knew the name, and it slipped their mind, and they were too lazy to go look in the LNC list for it, and they were researching the case. In private, they asked me, I can't think of it right now, and that's the only time I've ever... And that person already knew it, and it was private.
It was just jogging their memory. And
it was private.
Not in the public realm.
And this person suspects this guy got railroaded by the state, and he wanted to, I knew the reason wasn't to gossip, it was to go research.
Yeah.
But I've never publicly said the name, and I never will, because it's not my place.
Yeah. And to be fair, the name doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's the question is, how do you deal with this in an effective procedural way that preserves the integrity of the process and the party while same time protecting the rights of the member. That's where it gets tricky.
But you know, this brings up an interesting thing. I think I am going to move to have those email threads that mention the name expunged from the public list.
It's probably a good idea.
Because we can do that.
Yeah. Because, okay, now let's be sure here though. Okay. We
could repost them as PDFs with the name redacted.
That's perfectly fine, but what I was going with was the executive session thing. Okay, does this qualify as a discipline issue because we're talking about revoking a membership even though there's not actually been a...
Well, there's a membership now.
Right, but the question is there a, just to use the term, is there a cause for removal?
Well, they're saying because he's convicted of a crime. And it's injurious to the reputation of the party. Okay. That's the cause.
That's what they're claiming the cause is. And right there is the grounds to moving into executive session.
And some people say, then why wasn't Arvin's situation an executive session? I think there's a difference between an officer and a private member. But Arvin waived that. Arvin said he did not want it. And that's his prerogative.
That is, because I know from past history when they were trying to do the same thing to Angela Keaton, and I was there at the time.
Right.
This when the Transparency Caucus was founded. She specifically waived it. She said, no, let's lay this all out for everybody to see.
Yeah, and that's what Arvin did. So that's why his
I remember because I webcasted that to the entire country.
And let's see, I don't think there's really any other issues to cover in this unless you think so. And if there isn't, I'll say that when I put this out, Mike and I will make ourselves available for a live, like, question and answer with, I don't know if you know, with YouTube, you can do a live thing and people can chat questions. But we're not going to do that unless there's sufficient interest.
Yeah.
You know, if we have enough people say, hey, we'd like to interact with you guys live on it,
Yeah.
to argue or agree, as long as you know name calling, then we'll do that.
In worst case, we're not hard to find otherwise.
Yeah, but I'll see if there's any interest. So unless you think there's anything else on this, all I can say is, as an LNC member, I will be voting to uphold, and I will be voting no on anything to try to disenfranchise membership rights.
Okay, let's just do one more wrap up then attached to all this, because we're talking on December 29th here.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good time to put the date.
Right. So, at this point, the vote is ongoing to determine whether they'll uphold the ruling of the chair or not.
And that expires January 5th.
That expires January 5th. Okay. The check has already been cashed, right? So that's out of the way. So then the motion would be, assuming the ruling of the chair is overturned, then it would go to a vote, an email vote regarding returning this person's donation.
Do you want to know the wording of the motion that will go live?
Yes. Let's be crystal clear on this.
I've got so many emails in my box right now, but I think I can find it.
What I want to do here is I want to lay it out for people listening exactly where things are at and where it can go. Procedurally, that is. We can leave hand baskets and paddles out of it, okay, folks?
Oh, Francis Went, the newest LNC member, just made a great point. He's the alternate for Region 1, brand new alternate for Region 1. He posted in the debate thread for the appeal. Although Roberts allows deliberative bodies to punish their members, sustaining members are not members of the LNC. Thus, the deliberative body that is afforded the right of punishment and expulsion is the body of delegates at convention.
Wait a minute. Sustaining members are not members of the LNC?
They're not members of the Libertarian National Committee.
Well, now just a cotton picking minute.
That card's wrong.
Because the card says Libertarian National Committee basic member.
Yeah, we've objected about this. That's you're not a member of the LNC.
Not in terms of the National Committee who does the party operations, no. So
Well, this is interesting because it brings up another point. There are two meanings of LNC. One is the
and that's part of the problem.
the legal,
The legal entity LNC Inc. Yes.
yeah, and one is the board.
Yeah.
So he means let's just say here the board. They're not members of the board. They're
Right.
not sustaining members of the board. Thus, the deliberative body that's afforded the right of punishment is the body of delegates at convention. Our bylaws do have a mechanism for how LNC members are removed, because those are our members, but not how members are removed. Should the delegates choose to adopt such rules, even during convention, it is the duty of this body to uphold them. So, Mr. Went is right.
But this goes back to the point of defining your terms properly,
Right.
too.
But I said that when we were doing tour, it said that the assembly has to try them. I said the assembly's not the LNC.
Right.
The society is not the LNC.
Right.
It's
Which
people.
of course raises the next question: Do they really want to have the entire national convention in Austin in 2020? When we're dealing with platform and bylaws, we got C-SPAN on hand, we got presidential and vice presidential
Right, you thought Naked
nominations,
Dancing Man was
and
embarrassing?
board elections going on, and to go deal with this on top of all of it? I'm sorry, but yeah, you thought what happened on the stage in the last one was crazy, and not in the world.
Yeah, you'll be wishing for dildos and dancing naked men.
Yes, and the simple fact that we don't need to. I've been through one of these at a state convention, and that was bad enough because it was nuts. It was necessary, but it was nuts. Do we really want to go through that with a national convention? I would tell you absolutely not. we got too many things on the agenda anyway. On top of having something like this, it would turn into a circus. We don't need to go there.
Plus, it would require a suspension of the rules because we have a set agenda per standing rules for
Correct.
for convention. So it would require it actually would fall during the resolution section, which we never reach. We always run out of time before the resolution
Right.
section.
Which would eventually, so the net effect of all that will leave the whole dang thing in limbo.
But they'd have to
Which
suspend
again-
the rules.
Which again interferes with, infringes on members' rights.
I don't think,
Because they have a right to the due process.
unless it comes through bylaws committee, that's then a whole other thing.
Right.
And I don't know if this would get out of bylaws committee.
I doubt it.
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have a good read on this particular. Well, I know. Well, Richard Longstress on it, and I don't know how he would feel about having a bylaw. I know how he feels about the LNC doing it. To me, that's clear cut.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would vote for a bylaw as a delegate. I'd consider it though.
I'd have to see how.
I have to see how it was written, and
Yeah.
I'd consider it. As a delegate, I have that power.
Yeah.
As an LNC member, I do not have that power.
Yeah, and that creates a big different can of worms. The best really approach for all this, regardless of how the ruling of the chair is determined, is simply say, look, he's a member, let it go. You know, if people are going to nitpick enough to raise hell over one member paying $25 from a prison somewhere, then they've got to dig pretty damn deep to find a problem with that. That's nitpicking to the point of nitpicking for the sake of
Look, we
nitpicking.
got a bigger problem. We've got a life member who is a public figure, who publicly advocates pedophilia.
Right.
Pedophilia.
Yeah, and that is a bigger problem.
And he's a life member.
Yeah.
Last convention, the guy who was running around in the gorilla suit tried to get the rules suspended to get Nick, or he kept thinking this was Nick's job. It's not. But to get the convention to throw out this guy. And he couldn't get the 2/3 to suspend the rules. And this is for not someone who was convicted in the past. Someone who right now is charged with rape, I believe, rape of their wife. I don't know if that charge has been dropped or if it's currently pending. At one point it was charged. And I think she committed suicide over it. And openly advocates pedophilia and disenfranchisement of the voting rights of women. Is one of those really extreme, like,
Yeah.
male supremacist kind of, and he's a life member.
With an attitude like that, does he have a life?
So, what do you do? Again, if they throw out this guy, I want to know when we're throwing out Weld.
And I think it comes back again to the whole argument of, what's the right battle to die on? And having national throughout members because they just happen to be on the other side of a state wall for whatever reason, that doesn't seem like a hill to die on.
Well, let's take it. Oh, there was another argument that was made. I'm glad we continued. There's been arguments made by state chairs, not by LNC members, that as long as he's incarcerated, that's a problem because he hasn't finished paying his debt to society or paying his punishment. Forget about I know that debt to society word can be triggering. He hasn't fulfilled his punishment, and that he'd be welcome to be a member once his sentence is served.
But then you fall into the argument of, okay, what's considered justice for the crime?
Well,
if there even is a crime in the first place, as we define it.
Well, I think the person would argue that we have to do just like we were, and assuming that the trial was just, let's assume that the sentence passed was just.
But then you fall into the argument of, okay, do you want to apply that standard to every single person?
Right. And do we believe
who has been
it?
tried and convicted of a crime, and they may be serving a parole or a probation after in lieu of a sentence?
And
I mean, where do you, I know it's a slippery slope argument, but at the same time, you have to ask the question: how do you define this?
well, and plus the past Libertarian Party platforms, and those have not been repudiated. Just because it's not our current platform doesn't mean they've been repudiated. It means that we've decided that a different format is just better to forward face. The doctrines are still there.
Right.
so Portland people, your Portland massacre people, too bad, so sad. The old platforms actually condemned punitive justice and favored restitutive.
Restorative, yeah.
Well, restorative, and if he committed a crime against these girls, he'd have to do something to make the money or whatever.
Right.
So just because he's serving time in jail, so we're then saying that is then discharging? No. So that's a whole other issue. But that has been an argument made by state chairs.
Right.
I don't think it's completely unreasonable, but I don't buy it. I think it falls flat. But let's forget about this guy. Let's say we had, let me think of these people. Let's pretend Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't dead and he joined. He's in prison for the rest of his life. He admits what he did.
Yeah.
No question. And it wasn't like, I think no matter how awful we think potentially sex trafficking, anybody, adults or minors, is, I think we'd agree that killing them and cannibalizing them is worse. I would hope we could agree on that.
Yes.
So he could never be a member. Is that, so I kind of lost my train of thought here.
The argument is that he can never be a member because of his past crimes.
Because of his past crimes, right. So is that where we want to go? In that case, then, we're saying the message that redemption's impossible.
Which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right, because that is one reason, not the only, but that's one reason some of us oppose the death penalty. Because we believe redemption is possible.
Yeah, that's not the reason I oppose it, but
right.
yeah.
That's some people, as I
right.
said.
But at the same time, by making the claim that redemption is impossible, you also turn around and you basically discount the conversion of every single Democrat, Republican, Green, or Independent
and,
that have become a libertarian.
We have people...
Because you can argue that redemption from those parties into the Libertarian Party is what got them here.
We have people in our party who used to be white supremacists. Openly.
Yeah.
And you could find the writings, and they've reformed. Do we throw them out now, too?
Exactly.
Because it comes up. I'm not going to mention any names, because I don't want to drag anybody's past through the mud. But I can tell you that it's come up in campaigns because some of these people have become so reformed that they actually run for office, and people bring up their past. And they're like, I'm not that person anymore. But do we throw them out now? Or... this comes up all the time too, and I don't think he'll mind me mentioning his name. Dr. Bookman, who I respect, he used to be the state chair of Utah, runs campaigns all the time. They keep trying to embarrass him and the party because he is, I don't know how you would word it, he doesn't believe necessarily that we've been visited by aliens, but he thinks the government is hiding something about it. And he thinks it's possible.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of people who think that.
Every time he runs, people make little green men jokes. And he's not a tinfoil hat guy. He's an academic. He's coming at it from an academic perspective. I think the government's hiding something too. And I also, here we go. Now you guys might as well just throw me out of the party. I think it's possible. Because, listen, we're really going on a tangent here, but is it so crazy to believe that there is extraterrestrial life? No, I don't think so.
Mathematically, it's a certainty.
But I think mathematically, it's a very slim chance they've ever been here.
Right, because it's a big universe.
It's a big universe, and there's no reason to think we're special. From space, we don't look special. The only thing that would unless we start discovering that there's ways of time slips or all that, the only thing that would alert anyone that we're here is our radio waves, and our radio waves haven't even made it to the nearest star yet.
Right, and our volume of emissions are more than our sun, but that's a whole other discussion.
But
the simple fact of the matter is, yes, there's probably intelligent life out there somewhere else. Why? Because they haven't come here yet.
Yeah. So the chances of them, but there could be ways to detect life that we don't know about yet.
And frankly, if they were to come here, I'd want them to land right smack dab on the 50-yard line in the middle of the Super Bowl, being broadcast globally, so there's absolutely no doubt and no cover-up, if there is one, as to what's going on.
If there isn't, if there isn't extraterrestrial life, then I think there's only one reason for it. and this has been speculated a lot, it's because all advanced civilizations destroy themselves.
Eventually.
So if there is no extraterrestrial life, we're fucked as far as I'm concerned, because that means every advanced civilization self-destructs. And that holds some viability, but that doesn't mean there isn't extraterrestrial life. It just means there's no advanced ones. But anyway,
okay. So back to the originally. Okay, so if the motion we went way off.
No, but it's important because these are related issues.
Right.
Do we throw out the people who believe in chemtrails?
Or flat
I can tell you, there's
flat
some.
earthers.
There are plenty of people say throw out the flat earthers. I was at a convention, and I will not say what state, but they did a presentation on chemtrails. I think that's nuts. Other people don't.
Yeah.
So do you throw them out?
Exactly. I mean, where do you start? Anyway.
9/11 truthers. Do we throw them out? Anti-vaxxers. I know you're an anti-vaxxer. Throw him out. I'm not. You are. Throw him out.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, getting back to the process. Okay, I know we went way the heck of.
And if you want me to edit out the anti-vax stuff, I will. Because I didn't want to out you. If you're not open about it,
I've been dealing with vaccine damage for 44 years, folks. Simple damage. Simple, straight up.
And Mike and I sometimes argue. Well, I don't argue because you can't argue if somebody has damages.
Yeah.
It obviously does happen.
Yeah.
But I'm still very pro-vax.
In any case, let's leave that aside because that's not where we're going. Anyway, back to the whole process. Okay, so if the ruling of the chair is overturned and this becomes an active motion, okay?
Oh, I wanted to get you the wording.
Right.
Okay. You can still keep going.
Well, where I was going to go with this is what's the calendar for dealing with that motion over an email vote? When's the next LNC meet? How's that factor in?
Our next
All
LNC
those
meeting.
details.
Our next LNC meeting is February 1st.
Okay, so that wouldn't be a factor involved. So, okay, the idea was okay. What it was basically was okay. If this is overturned, what happens next is where I was headed with that.
Oh, I know where I can find the motion. I linked it because I'm a good little secretary in the original ballot. Here's the motion, Mr. Phillips. Okay, link it. Hit the link. Linkity linky.
Stretch.
Hey, listen. Sometimes I gotta pat my knee back. Okay. Here's. Let me move my mic. Here's the motion. Mr. Phillips, given that the nature of this is no longer time sensitive, I disagree with the interpretation that this is not a matter we can address. He's including debate in his motion, but that's okay. Not a matter we can address. As was pointed out, no ruling of the chair was officially given, and I find the situation in general disturbing. This was before the ruling of the chair. I will ask for co-sponsors for the following motion. The LNC directs the executive director to refund the donation of name, which should not be in this motion, and further not accept his membership application until after the national convention in May 2020. This will allow the delegates, if they choose to address it, to make a decision either in specific or in general, blah, blah, blah. So basically,
he wants to punt it to the
he
convention.
wants to the LNC not to accept it until after the convention. If the convention makes a decision, then that tells the LNC.
He wants to punt it to the convention. Is what it comes down to.
Okay, so that's the, and I didn't recall he said that, so I'm glad oh, did I just screw you up? Are you still in frame?
You're fine. You're
okay.
fine.
Okay, so that's the motion, and we can't do that.
Which of course raises a different question. Okay. When an application for membership comes into the National Party, is there a timeline or a deadline for processing or rejecting that application?
No, the minute they
separate from the check. Okay.
The minute they sign the NAT pledge, they're a member.
Okay. So it's instant. Boom, you're in.
Yeah, because you're not a sustaining member. So we don't keep records of who signed the NAT pledge.
So by asking him,
we do, but we don't.
So by him asking then to punt that to the membership, that's really not in order either. If Mr. Convict here has already signed his pledge.
Let me see here. Correct. We can refund it, but he's still a regular member.
Right. So there's nothing really for the convention to decide.
But this is part of what Nick overruled.
You're right.
So if Nick's, I to be honest with you, I probably don't have the energy to do this. because I only have so much bandwidth.
Right.
But if the ruling of the chair is overturned and then this motion passes, I would be inclined to appeal it to the Judicial Committee.
That makes sense.
But I really just don't have the bandwidth to get 10% of signatures.
Right. Because the argument's simple and straightforward. Once they sign the pledge, they're a member.
Right.
And there is no delay in processing the application. It's done.
Honestly, I think, and Nick, I wouldn't put him. Okay. Where's here? I wanted to look up that section about interpretation of bylaws. Yeah, so this is important. Each society decides for itself the meaning of its bylaws.
Right.
The LNC is not the society for one thing, but that's, so I don't think the LNC can vote to do something which appears to be contrary to the bylaws because,
No, they can't.
well, for two reasons. One,
can't.
we're not the society.
Uh-huh.
But number two, the second part here, when the meaning is clear, of course that is what's in dispute, but that's always what's in dispute, isn't it?
Right.
The society, even by unanimous vote, cannot change the meaning except by amending its bylaws.
Right.
I think Nick would be perfectly within his rights if his ruling was overturned and that motion passed to refuse to abide by it. I think he'd be perfectly within his rights to do that.
But not only that, but look at this number 2 on there. When a provision of the bylaws is susceptible to two meanings, one of which conflicts with or renders absurd another bylaw provision, the other meaning is not, the latter must be taken as its true meaning. Well, the bylaws are pretty clear that once you sign the pledge, you're a member.
Right.
So,
So I think Nick would be perfectly within his rights to ignore that. And Nick's done that
and
before,
here-
by the way.
But here's number 4. If the bylaws authorize certain things specifically, other things of the same class are thereby prohibited. The bylaws already authorize what can be removed for cause when it comes to specifically to LNC members. There is nothing in there about removing a member for cause.
That, right.
So therefore, it's prohibited.
See, we're even coming up with more of that. That's
Yeah.
true. It shows that they thought about such things.
Yes.
I was making more of a common sense practical argument, but there's the Roberts argument.
Yeah, that's on 589. So yeah, so there's plenty of arguments to say that, frankly, the guy should be considered a member, and that's all there is to it.
Because there's precedence for Nick to do something like that. We're going to bring up Oregon again. The if you remember, I think you were involved at this point because this is years now.
Right.
When the Judicial Committee decided it was going to revisit its decision from 4 years prior
Right.
and rescind it.
Uh-huh.
Because remember, the Judicial Committee overturned the LNC,
Right.
putting then
Yeah.
Group A back in.
Right.
So when a new Judicial Committee with different allegiances and ideological persuasions came into power, they decided they were going to rescind something from 4 years ago without any circumstances changing.
Right.
And when that decision came down, Nick was just like, that's nice, and he ignored it.
And at the same time, it was like, no, you can't do that because the simple fact of the matter is that I believe in the bylaws, the Judicial Committee decision, what's made is final.
No, it's not actually.
Uh,
Roberts really sucks on that point. I argued that it's an action that can't be rescinded because there's been detrimental reliance. You can't unring the bell, is what I said. But Nick just basically said, that's nice.
and the Secretary of State of Oregon said Group A was the ones
Right.
that were valid in the first place anyway.
But so
There you go.
Nick, I thought he was just boss when he did that. He was
Yeah.
just like, well, have fun, you guys, that's nice. Mr. Carling wasn't too thrilled with that.
Mr. Carling doesn't get thrilled about a lot of things, but that's another story.
So,
So anyway, if the ruling of the chair is overturned and this becomes an active motion, what's next?
well, we vote on it.
And that time frame takes you out to when?
Okay, so January 5th would be midnight Pacific time, January 5th, would be when we know the results of the appeal. And you can't even know earlier if one side seems to be winning, because people are allowed to change their votes up until
Right.
midnight. The only time you can close a ballot early is if everyone has
Votes.
either voted or indicated that they're not going to,
Right.
like expressly abstained,
Yeah.
which never happens. Rare, it's happened once, I think, but on something very non-controversial. It doesn't happen on any controversial motions. So then that would mean, let's say it got overruled, that means January 6th, I would start the ballot for that second motion. Though that brings up an interesting point. I'd have to talk to Nick, but, and then it'd be 7 days out from then, so 13th.
Okay. So there's still 2 weeks basically before this will
Right.
be come to a final conclusion if the chair's ruling is overturned.
I would follow the direction of the chair, but I have to tell you, and I could be wrong here, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I think, I'm not going to do this, but I think I would be in my rights to refuse to start the ballot because it violates the bylaws.
Interesting.
Just as a matter of principle and conscience, that I just will not. Now, I've already hinted at that before, and one of the LNC members said they'll just start it on their own because I'm refusing to do my job.
Well, okay, let's think that out a minute. Because on one hand, if you are claiming to refuse to do your job because you feel it violates the bylaws, then they could try to remove you for cause.
Well, they could.
They could try that. On the other hand, does it specifically say that in the bylaws or in the policy manual or wherever, that the secretary is the one who starts the ballots?
In both the doesn't it say secretary on here? It does in the policy manual, but I'm not sure what the bylaws say.
Let's look. Secretary, here it goes, shall be the recording officer of the party and performs his duties as assigned by the chair or the national committee. Shall attend the
No, but I
meetings
meant
of
when
national
on the
committee.
bylaws section, in the part that talked about email ballots. I think
Oh.
it says the secretary will.
Hang on, let me flip some pages here. No, that's not it either. Electronic mail ballots. The chair or secretary
Oh.
shall send electronic mail ballots on the questions
So if
submitted by
I
the chair.
didn't, it would go to the chair.
Correct. And if he refused to do it both, well, then we have a whole different can of worms.
Then no one else can do it.
Right.
They would have to take it up at the LNC meeting.
Which would be in
Now,
February.
I'm not doing that
Yeah,
because to me, that really is the chair's call.
right.
I think he should refuse to honor it. Honestly, I think that's what he should do. But I'm not sure how he feels. Because he may have an argument. This is him, not me. I can't tell
He could-
somebody else what to do with their
he can also
conscience.
choose to defer implementing it until the next LNC meeting.
Right. And why this is getting pushed now? The next LNC meeting's a month away.
Right.
Even with the time frame we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
we're still looking at the 13th at the earliest.
Right.
And it could be later than that.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what's funny. I'm not going to be a bitch about it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no time frame given for a ballot to be started. I interpret it as a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
Reasonable amount of time in both my term and in Ms. Matson's term
Mm-hmm.
has been up to 2 or 3 days.
Right.
So I don't have to start the ballot on the 6th. And if I'm sick, I'm not starting the ballot on the 6th. If I'm well, I'm going to. I'm not going to play games. But theoretically, I could start at the 9th or 10th. And then we're pushing it out to the 17th or the 18th here. This is ridiculous. We have a meeting on the 1st.
Which raises the other question. Is there a deadline for resolutions for the National Convention?
No.
Okay.
And that's bad.
Yeah, I agree, but because there's nothing in the rules about a deadline. That's why I was wondering.
Right, no, there's no... that's why Colorado
So,
has it.
Eventually, that somebody could propose a resolution at the National Convention saying that Mr. Convict is considered a member of the party,
Yeah.
and that would put an end to the whole thing. If
Yes.
somebody proposed that, assuming it would get heard.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that resolution would be out of order unless he was formally declared not a member.
Well, not necessarily, because if it's written in a way that says that it is the view of the delegates or we're going to phrase that regardless of whatever is done with his membership application, that he's considered a member of the party per the bylaws, then, well, that's just what the
But
mind of the delegates are, whether the LNC likes it or not.
But if he was still already a member because the LNC didn't do anything, wouldn't that be considered dilatory?
No,
Because
it's just reinforcing the statement.
right, so I guess it's no different than reinforcing the statement that taxation is theft.
Yeah, because for it to be dilatory, you have to be making the same motion repeatedly. But because this
So-
will be coming from the delegates, not from the LNC, it's a fresh motion.
So if we, here's just a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Is it possible for the convention to resolve that the sky is blue?
Sure.
Okay, because that's basically when you're
Yeah.
resolving something that's already a
They can
fact.
resolve the water's wet. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But well, we did resolve that taxation is theft. That's not in question. So
Yeah.
I guess.
They're right. That's almost a formality every time in
You know.
the convention.
All right, so I think we're done with this part, and we can move on to our other show. But unless anything else, I'm giving you an opportunity to add.
I think we.
You think we beat this horse to death and made hamburgers out of it?
Well, maybe dog food.
Glue?
Maybe dog food and glue. But
Yeah, made Elmer's.
no, it's been. I think it's been a really good. It's been long, but it's been a good discussion about.
I believe
a
in
topic.
long form.
And it's also been very comprehensive, covering a lot of areas. Hopefully, other members of the LNC will listen to this.
That's
and
why I want to get it out
get some
tonight.
ideas. Yeah.
Latest tomorrow, because I do have job work to do, because even
Sure.
though my job's getting phased out, they're doing me a favor by keeping me on, so I'm still trying to do a good job. I'm not
Right.
taking them out, or, well, you guys are going to fire me, so, you know.
No, that's the honorable way to work it. Even if you know your time's coming to an end, you don't coast out. You do. You
Unless
keep
they've
doing the-
treated you like shit, but they're
Yeah.
treating me well, so,
Well, if they treat you like shit, you just say, "Fuck it, I'm out of here."
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, no, they're letting me do my doctor's visits. All right, so that's going to be it for this. Probably get this up on the Big L podcast as well. And again, if you're interested in a live thing, let me know. All right, until next time. We don't have official sign out right now. We'll come up with, oh, here we go. Adjourned. Without objection. All right, later. Bye-bye.